We use fractions to count what we can't count using whole numbers. To start out, let's take a look at what we know. If we were asked to count how many apples we had here, we would say we had 3 apples. Or if we were asked to count how many basketballs we had here, we could say we had 5 basketballs. But how would we count this many basketballs? That's where fractions come in. Fractions are used for counting part of a whole. But in order to make a fraction, the object needs to be broken up into equal parts, meaning each section is the same size. Fractions are written with 2 numbers separated by a fraction bar. The top number, which we call the numerator, is used to represent the amount of parts that we have, and the bottom number, which we call the denominator, is used to represent the amount of parts in the whole. Still confused? Let's try writing one. Taking a look at this circle, how would we write a fraction to represent this portion of it? Remembering what we just learned, fractions have a numerator and a denominator separated by a fraction bar. We learned that to find the numerator, we count how many parts we have, which in this case is 1. Now we need to find the denominator, which we learned was the total number of parts in the whole. We see here there are 6 parts to this circle, so the denominator is 6. Fractions are as simple as that. We now know that this portion equals 1/6 of the circle. Let's take a look at these examples. We see here that we have 6 out of 8 pieces of the circle, so we have 6/8 of the circle. In this example, we see that we have 3 out of 4 pieces of the circle, so we have 3/4 of the circle. But wait a minute, these circles look the same. How can they be equal when the fractions don't look the same? These are what we call equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions have the same value even though they may look different. The rule to remember when dealing with equivalent fractions is that what you do to the top number, you must always do to the bottom. For example, if we wanted to multiply the top by 2, we would have to multiply the bottom by 2. That would give us 2/4, which would be equal to 1/2. If we wanted to go one step further and multiply both top and bottom by 2 again, we would get 4/8, which is equal to both 2/4 and 1/2. When we look at an example of this set of equivalent fractions, we can see that they are all equal to each other. Let's take a look at some things to remember about fractions. Fractions are written with a numerator and a denominator separated by a fraction bar. We also need to remember that fractions can be equal even though they don't look the same. We call these equivalent fractions. The last thing to remember about fractions is that when dealing with equivalent fractions, what you do to the top number, you must always do to the bottom number.